I just learned about Old London Bridge yesterday. Today? Really too. And I had a quick smoke break here. And I thought I would just share with you this interesting video that I found. This video is it's not a Tartaria or a questioning type of video. This is a the fascinating history of Old London Bridge. um, Alan Barton, the antiquary, some dork, 98.7 subscribers, 282 views. So I thought you guys might find this as interesting as I do. We're going to be pausing and stuff.
Until 1729, Old London Bridge was the only bridge that spanned the River Thames in England's capital. Unless you crossed by barge or by ferry, it was the only way to enter the city of London from the south.
This is fucking
The
nuts.
nearest bridge to it was 10 miles upstream at Kingston upon Thames. Covered in many extraordinary buildings, it was one of the great engineering wonders of medieval and early modern London. The present London Bridge, which, as we will see, dates from the 1960s, is on a slightly different alignment.
It's just nothing compared to it. Why wouldn't we?
It is a little further west.
They built this bridge all the way back then, but nowadays we're like, nah, it's alright.
Close to the Priory Church of St Mary Overy, now
Close to the Priory Church of St Mary.
Which was right beside the church
It's
of St Magnus the Martyr, and in fact, from the 1670s, the entryway to Old London Bridge ran directly underneath the church tower.
Of course it did.
Now, it isn't clear when the first crossing of the Thames was made at this point.
Oh,
it
yeah?
may well be as early as Roman times. We know from documentary evidence that a series of timber bridges were constructed in Saxony.
What the fuck is going on here? Why isn't this working? Okay.
And in Norman times. Some chroniclers relate that when King Canute invaded England in 1016, there was already a bridge, and it was such an obstacle on the river that he had to construct a canal from Rotherhithe to Vauxhall in order for his ships.
So the yada yada narrative is in 1068 there was already a bridge here
To circumvent it.
Okay.
In 1133 or 1135, during a major fire that destroyed a large part of the medieval city, the then timber bridge was the creation of King Henry II, and under the supervision, Old London Bridge, built of elm, was begun following this fire in 1163 at the instigation of King Henry II.
It was a fire.
And under the supervision of a priest called Peter of Colchurch.
Oh yeah, the priest.
The construction of a permanent
So the thing
London
is,
bridge was commenced not long after that in 11.
Okay, so it won't just stop. So one of those things you have to be well aware of is back in these times, a guy would go to school to be a priest, but he would also take engineering classes and shit, I guess. You know, at the school that he went to back in 1060, whatever.
Bridge was commenced not long after that.
That's how they built it, just like that.
And again, it was Peter of Colchurch who was tasked with overseeing this work.
Peter of Colchurch, he just did it.
30 years or so to complete.
Right.
In 1202, Peter was nearing the end of his life, and the final phase of the construction work was overseen by a French monk called Isambert.
I mean, the wording is just so interesting. It was overseen by these people. Yeah, well, who designed it? I mean, it's just interesting, don't you think?
According to the London historian John Stowe, the bridge, which had 19 narrow pointed arches, was completed in 1209. Now, we know an awful lot about this wonderful structure architecturally, as it has been the subject of numerous drawings, paintings, engravings, and prints between the mid-16th
Paintings, engravings, and prints.
Constructing a permanent stone bridge in the late 12th and early 13th century across the broad Thames was a complex and laborious undertaking.
Really? You think so,
The
huh?
first part of the process was to drive hundreds of wooden piles into the riverbed
Hundreds of
to
wooden
create
piles.
wooden platforms or artificial islands called sterlings.
Exactly.
The stone piers of the bridge were then constructed on top of these rubble-filled timber sterlings,
Of
and
course.
then these were topped with the sequence of pointed arches.
Of course.
The bridge was built at just the time when round-headed Norman arches were giving way to pointed Gothic arches.
Exactly.
And these pointed arches gave the bridge added stability. The sterlings and arches were so well built that most of them stood the test of time and were still in position in the 18th century.
Of course.
The sterlings,
800 years later. Right, look at this.
Piers, dramatically
This is what you have to believe. This is the truth. This isn't a theory.
The Thames was tidal. The bridge created rapids to the east of it that were difficult to negotiate by boat. The London watermen were very skilled at shooting the bridge, as they termed it, without overturning their barges. But most passengers, including the king and the royal court, when the court chose to move to the Palace of Palencia at Greenwich, chose not to risk the ride and would instead get out of their barges at the Three Cranes Wharf, close to where the Cannon Street Bridge is.
Look at all these homes and shit. All of this. People all lived in this, huh?
Before embarking once again on the other side of the bridge at Billingsgate.
Oh, of course they
This
would.
slowing of the flow of the River Thames by the narrow arches also caused the river upstream to freeze during the mini ice age that lasted from the Middle Ages to the 19th century.
Of course, yeah.
It became something of a tradition for Londoners to take to the ice and for frost fairs to be
Who
held upon
built
it,
all
with
of this
pences,
shit? Look
food
at this
and
stuff
ale
in the
provided,
background.
and even printing
All these
presses set up in
giant
the middle of
towers
the
and
solid
shit.
river
Who
on
built
which
all that?
souvenirs were printed.
How?
Almost immediately after it was built,
Look at this
buildings were
motherfucker.
constructed on the river
1682.
south with shops and houses that created, in effect, a southern suburb of the city.
1682.
On the wider central pier of the bridge, a
Here's
chapel was constructed,
1544.
founded by Peter of Colchurch himself,
Oh,
in
yeah,
which
of
he
course.
was buried at his death in 1205.
Of course, he founded it.
This
He built
chapel
it.
was a large
Fuck
two-story
yeah.
structure with a
Two-story
lower
structure.
chapel or crypt built into the river pier and an
Of
upper
course.
chapel in the early English Gothic style.
Yep,
The
makes
chapel was
sense.
dedicated to St Thomas of Canterbury, Thomas Becket, who was born in the parish of St Mary Colchurch, Peter's own parish. Peter may well have known the saint personally, and he had a
Look at how
strong
big this
devotion
shit
to him.
is.
The chapel was staffed
And yet we
by
have
a
these,
small
this,
college of
by this.
clergy,
Yep,
2
that's who did
priests
it.
and 4 clerks, who were known as the Brothers of the Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
In the 14th century, several chantry chapels were established in this space, endowed by Londoners, where priests could celebrate Mass for their souls. Swelled the clerical staffing of the Chapel of St Thomas to the point where it became quite a substantial institution.
Oh, yeah.
The chapel contained numerous relics, including one of the True Cross.
Oh, yeah. The True
By the
Cross.
late Middle Ages, it was
Look at
customary
the
for
background of these
like
paintings.
those
Don't
in
look at
Chaucer's
these.
Canterbury Tales,
Look at this shit.
who had gathered at the
Who
Southwark
built
Inns
all this
before
stuff back
making for
then?
St. Thomas
Or they're all
at
just
Canterbury
making it up.
to hear Mass in the Chapel of St. Thomas.
These
before
people
they set
were
off on
building
their
all of
journey.
this, right?
The chapel's dedication to St. Thomas of Canterbury ensured that at the Reformation, the building quickly fell prey to the reformers' zeal. Henry VIII tolerated the chapel's continuance, but it was rededicated to St. Thomas the Apostle
Of
rather
course.
than to Thomas Becket,
Yeah,
who was considered
a different
traitor
Thomas.
by the king.
Yeah, he rededicated
In the
it to a
reign of
different
Henry
Thomas.
VIII's
Got
son,
it.
Edward VI,
The remains of
priests
the
were all
lower
dismissed,
chapel in
and in
1832.
1553, the chapel was repurposed for secular use. And it was
Repurposed.
leased to a grocer who used the upper chapel as his shop and his house, and the lower chapel as his storehouse. The
Of
lower
course he did.
chapel
Yeah,
survived into the 19th century and was only demolished with the rest of the bridge in 1832.
of course.
As
Look
the
at
bridge
this.
was the primary
Look at this
entrance into
building.
the city of London
Look at
from the
how
south,
how
an
tall
effort
these
was
are.
made to
Just look at this building. I mean, they say the bridge was only 25 feet wide, and then these buildings would overhang, way overhang like that. I mean, these are 8 stories tall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. at least 8 stories tall buildings just over and over on a bridge in the 1600s. They built all this. There's no, like, there's no conspiracy theory. This is the history. You have to know this. You have to believe this story.
Sure that it was defensible. There was a small northern gate, but the primary defensive structures were all to the south. Midway along the southern section of the bridge was a gateway, and before it was what was termed a draw lock, where a timber drawbridge could be raised.
Of course.
In addition to keeping people out in time.
Okay, so here, look. Like, this is like the doorway. This is a doorway in a normal, what, 2-3 story dwelling? So what the fuck are these? These are humongous. I mean, this archway thing is, at least, what, 1, 2, 3. These are 3 to 4 stories tall. So these are like 7 to 8 stories tall. Who built all this?
Of trouble, this drawbridge also enabled larger vessels to move upstream beyond the bridge when the tide allowed it. In July of 1450, these defences were tested.
Of course.
When a rebellion led by Jack Cade
look at these
ended
goofy
with
pictures.
A battle on the bridge itself.
A battle on the bridge itself.
In 1305, a grisly tradition that continued until the late 17th century was begun when the head of the Scotsman William Wallace was displayed on a spike on
They'll
the
never
Tulloch
take
gateway.
or freedom.
In 1450, Jack Cade would also have his head displayed on the bridge too, and heads of other traitors against the crown, including Sir Thomas More, Thomas Cromwell, and Cardinal John Fisher, were similarly displayed in the reign of Henry VIII.
Yeah, look at the background. Somebody drew this because that's what they were looking at.
There longer. Now, in Wingard's drawing
1544.
in the middle of the 1540s, perhaps
1544,
you can see all the spikes with heads upon them on top of the gate. Perhaps one of them there at this time was that of Thomas Cromwell. In the 1570s,
that's what all those heads are.
Oh, to the medieval gateway at the bridge's southern end.
Right. Those are all heads.
Spikes in this new location can be seen in Visscher's Panorama of London in 1616. The relocation of the head display was due to a major piece of redevelopment on the bridge.
Redevelopment. Okay, again, look at this. This is even more in depth. So how many stories are each of these with all these little windows and shit? I mean, maybe it's even bigger than we think. Look at it, the chimneys coming out and shit, but I mean, these are all windows. And then what's it like? Where do you get your light source from when you're like in the middle, on the 3rd floor in the middle of this big huge complex? Where do you get light from? Go Speed Racer. Seriously, think about this shit. You have to think about this.
And in its place was a timber-framed building known as Nonsuch House.
Nonsuch House.
This name as it resembled
Nonsense House.
Palace of Nonsuch. The building was an early modern example of a prefab. The structure was prefabricated in the Netherlands and was then shipped to London.
That makes sense.
In 1577 over the
That makes sense.
The bridge itself was only 20 foot wide, and the house
only
was
20 foot wide.
And it overhung the
bridge. Look at that shit.
Cantilevered out from the pier and supported
big archways.
Struts. 3 stories high, Nonsuch House had corner turrets with gilded weather vanes on the top. In the 1680s, on the south side of the main gate were affixed 2 sundials and a large inscription, "Time and Tide Stay for No Man." It has been suggested that this glorious structure, which the Corporation of London paid for and erected, was built to act as the residence of the Lord Mayor.
Of course.
Another substantial timber-framed...
Look at that shit. Hang on a second. Oh, you're stuck with me. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Well then.
I guess I can't finish that video right now. I mean, just think about that, man. Think about what I just showed you guys. And I'm reading you, or I'm showing you guys what we're supposed to know. You know, nothing conspiracy about it. Nothing. You know, this is the official narrative. This is how you're supposed to think. And do you not have any issues with it? That's how that works? That whole idea, like I wish I knew just how big the River Thames was. Like, I know there are my London people that come through here, or at least my traveled people that come through here. So you know how big the Thames is, and especially at that point, like how rough the sea is, how rough the water is. But it's always the same shit, man. You always see it. You know, it's always the same stupid narrative. Like, you have to believe the unbelievable. You can't tell a reasonable thinking, rational, you can tie your own shoes kind of human being that narrative makes sense. It fits in with the historical impression you have of how history works, how things are. I mean, like, to me, it's frustrating. To me, it makes me mad. It's irritating in that way. Like, that these Jays demand that we believe such nonsense. And that part where, like, it's the missing piece to me. It's like, what is it that you go, yeah, clearly they're telling the truth. I mean, obviously we had the ability to build incredible, cities over bridges. We could build under bridges. We couldn't build under bridges until the 1800s. Under things like the Thames Tunnel was the first tunnel of its kind, or Thames Tunnel was the first tunnel of its kind, built in like 1840 or something. But the London Bridge had been around for fucking ever. So how does that work? I don't know, man. It's weird. It's weird when I think and learn about these new things. And, I didn't know about the old London Bridge until, 2-3 days ago. I just learned about this thing. And learning about this thing, I'm like overwhelmed. Like, what happened to those people? Are those the people that fill the catacombs? You pulled out like this in front of me so then you could drive slow like a jackass? Come on. I mean, don't you guys like... I don't know, don't you feel that? you always have that weird feeling that something isn't right, that we're being lied to, blah, blah, blah. And then you stumble across the narrative you're supposed to know. You're the conspiracy person. You're the kook. If you question these things, you're just supposed to believe it. And I just, how do you? Please, for anybody that does just believe it, how does that work? Your brain sees what they give us and says, like, that's the bomb right there. They got it all. Yep, they're not lying. Of course, Thames, 25 foot wide bridge with these huge. I mean, I don't know what you even call them. And to think like they were ornate as fuck. These faith, exactly. That's what it comes down to. You have to have faith in this shit because no logical, intelligent reason, thought, anything like that will fit. None of that makes sense. So it must just be, faith. They're telling the truth. Somehow donkey people were able to build London Bridge. I mean, so it starts by, driving a bunch of wooden stakes into the ground. Stakes called, and I forgot what they were fucking called. But I mean, where did these stakes come from? How did they drive them into the ground? This is heavy flow water. Like, this isn't like some stream. It's the Thames River. And they built all of these artificial islands, then filled the islands with rubble, then built the foundations on top of that with big ass stone. Like, where did they get all that stone from? How did they move that stone into place? How did they ship it where it was from to where it was? How did they get it? Elephants. And they didn't, though. It would like at least give some sort of credence to what they say, I guess. If they at least attempted to say something like, yeah, we used elephant, but they don't. They just don't even attempt to say any of it. They just tell you that it's the way it was. And then they tell you that, by some accounts, when the first people showed up, there was already a bridge there. Well, who built the already a bridge there? And it talks about how the bridges were, the bridge construction was overseen by these monks. Like, how many monks do you think exist today that also could build buildings, have engineering degrees, engineering, architecture, construction? Like, they could do all that shit. People are capable of doing amazing things. Yeah, like coming up with incredible stories. How come people today aren't capable of doing those same things? I don't believe we have anything today that rivals London Bridge, old London Bridge, at its peak. Especially London Bridge today, which looks like a joke. It's complete, regression. Yeah, we are lazy, yep. See, that's how it always works. It's that self-deprecating, we're just lazy. Oh, they were just so much better than us. We're just blah, blah. That's what they need it to be. That's how this narrative needs to exist. That we just weren't good enough. And that's how they get us. I mean, it's so... God, it's so obvious to me. I'm not... They who? We aren't... we are great. We aren't lazy. We aren't shitty. We are amazing. And what we're capable of today is supposedly way more than anybody else has ever been able to do. But it's not. I mean, it's clearly not. And when we say things like, oh, well, nowadays the cost would be too much, and the people are too late. It's just bullshit. I mean, these are just, how was it that back then, not only was the cost like more reasonable, but those laborers could do these things in like unheard of time frames. Building entire buildings, the cities that you're originally told are like nothing city. San Francisco is like nothing in 1840, and then by 1870 it's this mega metropolis. And I mean, it just, I don't know. I think it's a slow build, I guess. It's something that you have to keep picking up the little pieces too and all that shit, because to me it seems like it's all evidence. There's really no good clear evidence to back up the narrative. But I sort of stumbled across this my own self a day or two ago, where it's what if all the old world structures that we see today, that are still around today and weren't demolished because those who did the demolishing, because the ones that we see and think are incredible were the ones they thought were the most unremarkable. And they figured we'd be able to at least, build something similar probably pretty soon, so they wouldn't have to destroy these. These wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility. Not realizing that here we are all this time later and still can't do it. And what if again, the buildings that are still here were just sort of the shitty buildings? I mean, some of them were probably the important buildings, like, I don't know, the big churches and shit that are on top of the catacombs. And I don't know, maybe the Capitol buildings. I don't really know, but I know that, like, if you look at all of the old pictures, what we consider to be extraordinary and unique was everywhere. Every building was built like that. All the houses were built like that. It wasn't too incredible. So what if that's what it is they were like, oh, well, they'll be able to rebuild this one here real soon, so, or they'll be able to build something like this one here very soon, so we don't have to destroy this one, What if that's how that works? And we're just sniffing the wrong butt, you know what I mean? I need a new car, guys. If anybody wants to help a motherfucker out, help out a family, it would be greatly appreciated, because I need a new fucking car. And my family, and I need a new car. Am I going? What am I doing here? I might be going I am out picking up a kid. I think I went the wrong way. We'll see. So, when I say to you guys here in a minute, I appreciate that you were here. Go watch Hollywoodism, because Hollywoodism answers all the questions. I'll be back. I don't think I will. London Bridge is a really fascinating thing, and I think we need to look deeper into it. So, shit, where am I going here? What am I doing here? What am I doing here? What am I doing here? get your free download. Descriptions or link is in the description. Have yourself a wonderful day, and pedophiles kill yourself.